Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom.
G'day guys, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another installment of the Financial Freedom Secrets podcast. I've got a good friend of mine, Liam Morin from Profit for Contractors, calling in all the way from Canada. And we've been
flush backwards.
That's it. The toilet flush backwards. And we've been talking for quite a while. We share a lot in common, and we are really passionate about helping trade and home service businesses really just get their shit in order, because so many trade businesses have built an amazing business that have great economies of scale, but for some reason their businesses are still cash-eating monsters and not allowing them to achieve the lifestyle and the goals. Yeah, it's like a very, very difficult charity. So, Liam, great to have you here, mate. How you doing?
Good, man. I saw a funny quote on that the other day. It was like, can you prove your business is profitable? Like, yes, no, right? Do you know if your business is profitable? Yes, no. And it's like, if you can prove it, it's profitable, and you know that it's not profitable, it's like you're literally running a charity. So
Exactly.
Tell me more.
Exactly.
No, it's going good, dude.
There's probably more profitable charities out there. So
yeah, exactly.
let's help solve that.
Yeah.
So for those of the listeners or watchers that don't know you, mate, who are you? What do you do?
So yeah, I'm one of the partners here for contractors. So we help contractors, trades, business owners, so electricians, plumbers, roofers, builders, basically anybody who's in construction, basically get their profits back to pay for their freedoms, what we kind of say, PFC. So our mission is kind of to help contractors, basically globally learn how to run not only a profitable business, but how to actually put the systems in place so that the business, like you said, can scale without you having to be there all the time and having to work a bajillion hours. Because there are, as you know, Jackson, there are some guys actually who have super profitable businesses, but they're essentially 24/7 chained to the business, right? Yes. And they can never leave it. So it becomes like a trap, becomes a prison, a very nice gilded prison, but a prison nonetheless, right? So it's like, this is where you come in. Like, what do we do with those profits, right? What do we actually use them for so that we can get back our sanity and some of our time? And I think, for a lot of the guys that and I think this goes beyond contracting too, with the guys that you mentor outside of that space, is like, man, like most contractors, most business owners, they put so much time in, like 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. It's like time to get back some fun, Exactly. 100%. That's what it's all about. Like most business owners get into business because they want to create freedom and flexibility for themselves. But there's very few business owners that I know that have the true freedom that they really desire, right? Particularly for trade businesses as well. So I come from, my parents were tradies, and so I observed their journey. Incredibly hard workers. The hardest.
Yeah, but never saw themselves as money people. They were always working for a buck, and money was never working for them. So Liam, in your experience, mate, from looking at contract businesses all around the world, how many contract business owners see themselves as like money people?
The rare minority. Yeah, I think most contractors, I think just a lot of small business owners, they don't really think of themselves as like CEOs, business owners, right? They think of themselves as the doers, like the tradespeople, the crafters, whatever it is. And like you said earlier, most contractors are actually really, really, really good at what they do. They're really passionate about it, right? They provide a really great service and they're really great tradespeople, but they suck at running a business.
And that's the hard part, right? Because I think how this kind of goes is that you get good at a trade, you work under somebody, this guy's making big bucks. Why am I making him all of the money when I could go do it for myself? You go out on your own, and then you inherit all of these extra responsibilities and things. Are like, shit, I didn't sign up for all of this stuff.
It's overhead stuff I got to pay.
Exactly. I thought it was just going to be clean profit after my materials, and it just doesn't work that way. And they end up just creating another job for themselves or multiple jobs for themselves.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the common pitfalls that contract businesses and trade businesses find themselves in when it comes to managing their money. So what are the most common mistakes that result in them not having any profit?
I think the biggest one that we see, and again, you could this is like an overarching term we'll use here, but they never really learn their numbers, right? So most of these guys and girls that we meet, and I'm sure you do as well, is like, they don't really have like proper bookkeeping set up. They don't have a chart of accounts, right? They're taking cash payments. They're not reconciling their books. They're, not really tracking materials. It's just a mess. And they don't really have any kind of good system to bookkeep and track their numbers. And then two, they don't really have any idea what they're actually making in terms of like their pricing. They're just like, well, I just, threw this number together, or my buddy said I should charge this, or my old boss, like you said, he charged this. So I'm charging the same. And it's this umbrella term we use of like, you got to like know your numbers. You got to know, hey, for every dollar that I spend, I make this many dollars back, or, it costs me this much money a year to run this business and to, pay all my guys and pay all my expenses. And I don't think really most guys and girls learn these like fundamental, business basic concepts, and then couple that with bad bookkeeping. It's a mess.
Yeah, it's an absolute shitstorm. And we've seen it time and time again, because it's that perfect thing, the perfect storm of having really crappy books so you can't actually see what's actually going on, not understanding your cost to serve or your break-even point, and having guesstimate pricing, just like, oh, how much is this client going to pay today? And yeah, it doesn't work, particularly as you start adding on more complexity in your trade business. Because, yeah, sure, you might have been really profitable and it was just you, and you could charge $5,000 for a job. Yeah. But then when you've got 3 trucks and you've got 6 tradies and you've got all of these other expenses that are coming into your business, your cost to serve has fundamentally changed. So you've got to change everything about your business. And this is where good systems come into play, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think the other thing too, just because I'm sure, you've seen the back end probably more than I have, is there's also just really poor invoicing, like AR, AP, cash management. So there's a lot of guys who have like more work than they can shake a stick at, and they're always busy, but they're always broke. And it's like, dude, you're doing like a couple $100,000 a month in revenue and you have really great clients. It's like, why are you always broke? Oh, you don't take any money down. You don't take deposits. You don't have any kind of payment structure. You don't have any invoicing. Like you have overdue invoices, like 90 days. So they're like, the cash flow management process is also usually, like you said, a bit of a shitstorm. So it's like a double whammy, because you're super busy, but you're never collecting money.
100%. And this is a problem. Like, it's about, you need to know your numbers, but even the people who think they know their numbers, they stop at the profit and loss. And they don't look at the balance sheet. They don't understand what their cash conversion cycle is. They don't understand their AR days and their AP days. And this is what we commonly see. Like, so many trade businesses come to us, and I'm sure you see this as well. They go, hey, my accountant gave me my financials and said I made all of this money. Where is it? And well, it's all sitting on your balance sheet in unpaid AR because you haven't chased up your invoices.
Yeah. Or you owe a bunch of tax because you've been drawing all this money out of the business personally to pay for random shit and fun toys. And now you got to pay the tax man.
This is my biggest pain point. So
it's like, I bought a boat. It's like, why'd you buy a boat?
Oh gosh. And look, it's this vicious cycle, because the business is stressful and then they're pulling money out like it's an ATM in order to take the sting out of their stress, and try and reward themselves a little bit for all of the hard work, blood, sweat.
Yeah, let's be clear. These guys aren't out going like to the club and doing bottle service and flying to Vegas. They're just, you're paying for dinners, but these things add up, right? Like these you get a truck, you take dinners, you do this. It's like all of a sudden there's a bunch of money, right?
It gets out of control. So what's your view on trades businesses taking ad hoc drawings for themselves?
Oh man, as someone who did it like personally and for many years and had to pay lots of tax, which sucks. And I want to make just a quick little PSA. It really bugs me also. I assume this bugs you when guys are like, oh, I don't pay any tax. And I'm like, okay, then you're either stealing from the government and you're going to get billed for it, or you're running probably an unprofitable business. One of the two.
100%.
It's like I don't pay any tax. It's like, what?
It's not a badge of honor, bro. Like, it's negative. Pay tax.
You should pay some amount of tax, right? That's the whole thing as well in the industry. There's a lot of guys do cash deals and stuff, and I don't really want to pay tax. And it's like, well, no. The only way you're going to grow and be successful, if anything, it is a badge of honor that as you grow, you pay some taxes. It means you're making money.
Exactly.
Right. Like it's proportional to the profit you make. So yeah, just my little PSA is like, don't try and avoid tax, because that's going to get you in an even worse spot ultimately. Right. But yeah, the mixing of personal business funds, like it's really not that hard, guys, to set up a separate set of accounts, or even to set up a separate checking account. Right. Like, make sure you're obviously like you're properly incorporated, like really simple stuff. But if your wife's like, oh, I need $500 for this or that, like this is the death by 1,000 cuts. And then you get to the end of the year, like you said, and your accountant's like, cool, here's what you owe the government. And you're like, what?
I don't have money for that.
I'm broke.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right? It's like, I don't have that money. It's like, because like you said, there's no system that as you're going that you get, any kind of indicator or any kind of warning, like, whoa, hey, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing this, or you're going to have to pay this much tax, or you pass this threshold of tax, right?
Yeah. And there's so much to unpack here, mate. I think the first part is that when we're taking ad hoc drawings, we've got no clarity. and there's no structure, and it normally results in overspending. Because you don't know whether you're coming or going. And it's not it's typically not big stuff. Yeah, sure, there might be the once in a blue moon boat.
Yeah.
But it's typically all of the small stuff that adds up the most in my experience. And then before you get to the end of the year, you're just like, oh, I've pulled 150 grand out of the business. Where did it all bloody go? That's the first thing. And I think the next part of that is that we need to get structure around that income, right? Because at the end of the day, we all want to create financial freedom as business owners. You're not in business to create a job for yourself. And financial freedom requires surplus. We need to be able to live our lifestyle and have money left over after we've paid our taxes and paid all of our bills and lived our life. And without that surplus, there's no wealth being created. It's not happening. And the easiest way to do that is either get yourself on wages and put your money into your retirement savings, pay your workers' compensation, do your tax installments, or if you are going to be creative around taking money out of your business, at least get your accountant to give you a forward-facing tax plan. Okay, your average, if you're going to draw 150 grand out of the business, put aside 30%.
Yeah. They can tell you the exact number, guys.
Exactly. It's not hard. It's not hard. But many accountants don't. But I'm sure we can shitbag accountants for hours.
I can do that for days. We're interviewing accountants right now for our business, and it's like, man.
It's a nightmare. I'm sure it's a short list that we'll get down to. Yeah. I love picking fights with accountants because they are archaic historians who typically only look backwards. And growth doesn't happen from the past. So I'm glad we agree with that, mate. So let's talk a little bit about tax here, mate. I've found in my experience, no one really likes paying tax until they've been educated around why we pay tax and why it's a good thing. But I find that it's particularly trade and home service businesses that are particularly pissed off when they have to pay tax. Where do you think that comes from, Liam?
I think it comes from a couple of things. I think one, it's a lot of times learned behavior, because I do think that, like you said, a lot of these guys, maybe you're listening to this and you started your trades business because, like you said, you're working for somebody else and you saw that he was making a bunch of money, or you thought he was making a bunch of money. Or maybe you said, you know what, I can do it better. Like I can run a better business. I can be a better employer. I won't be as much of a dick, right? Like maybe you just wanted a better environment. But I think a lot of that learned behavior comes as you see those guys doing cash deals. You see those guys doing side jobs, right? And you just, hey, this is normal to me, right? This is what the industry does. And then I think secondly, there's a lot of stuff with like the way we learn our trade is through like an apprenticeship program for a lot of us, right? And that whole industry is endemic with that kind of thinking, unfortunately, of, hey, like, you don't do things in the books, you don't pay tax, right? Everything's on the side. And it's like, it's just, I think like the restaurant industry went through this years ago, right? Where they had to modernize and get on credit card and get away from cash, right? And like, it's a lag effect that's happening now, but I think it's like a combination of learned behavior and just like ignorance, really, like, to be honest.
Great. And look, I think when we actually unpack this from like a psychological standpoint, how cash gets presented is because your client wants a discount. They're like, hey, will you give me a cheaper price if I pay you cash? And then you say yes, but you've got to realize that you're paying sales tax on your materials and supplies. You're paying withholding tax and potentially retirement savings contributions for your employees. You're paying tax on all of these other things. So by providing a discount and having money in cash, either you don't actually have enough margin in that transaction in order to maintain profitability, or typically what happens is that cash just disappears through your hands because you actually can't run it through the system, and that actually results in you being in a worse situation as a result.
Yeah. It always vanishes, right? It's gone.
Exactly. Because what do you do with it? You go out and buy maybe some groceries with it, you go out to the bar or take the family out for a dinner, you book a holiday. But it's all discretionary stuff, which typically means that because of that behavioral principle, Parkinson's law, you end up spending more on those things than you otherwise would have spent.
Yeah, I can. Personally from experience, I can say whenever I would get like large cash payments, it's very easy to spend it very quickly, right? Like it's going to go. You're not going to you're going to go take a portion of it and put it in a box and put it on your bed. You're not going to do that. It's not going to happen, right?
100%. Most of the time that doesn't happen. So I think general rule is put no cashies, put them all through the business and run your business properly. And I struggled with this for many years. But the way that I would always check myself is I'd say, hey, if I was the CEO of a publicly listed company, how would I have to act and what standard would I be required to uphold without getting into trouble? It's such a good filter for running a really clean cut and business that has a lot of clarity.
Oh, I could not agree more, right? If you're getting the kind of clients, guys, who are like demanding you pay cash, like that's a red flag. That's probably not a good client because guess what? They can just screw you, right? They can just say, I'm not going to pay you, right? And like that can happen. Two, with cash, guys, there's no paper trail. So if there's an issue with like warranty, or someone gets hurt on site, or the client claims like something's defective, like there's no contract, there's no check, there's no payment on credit card. Like, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
You're the one, you're actually taking more risk taking cash, right?
100%.
It's better for the homeowner in many respects. Someone could argue it's not, but I think ultimately it is, because then if something happens, like you're screwed, right? Yeah. And like you said, dude, as well, if you're going to try and think with the mindset of like a successful future version of yourself, that person probably isn't taking cash, right? Like,
exactly.
Let's be honest. And two, if you do plan on growing your business, right, you're probably at some point going to need to take some kind of credit or some kind of debt or some kind of loan from somewhere to get the money to reinvest. You can't do that if you don't have any money on the books. The bank's going to go, oh, great, where's your income?
Exactly. Or even if you want to sell. And look, I do believe, and I'm trying to shift.
Or get a line of credit at your supplier, right? If you want to get a line of credit at the supply house and go, hey, like, give me a $50,000 line of credit, they're going to go, great, show me some financial statements.
Exactly, 100%. Liam, let's talk a little bit about the business valuation, because I think this plays in here as well. How many trade business owners aspire to want to be able to sell their business one day? Or on the flip side, how many are just prepared to hang up the keys, close the door, and walk away?
So, like, statistically speaking now, the vast majority of guys are just closing the door because they have no succession plan. They have no system. So right now we're going through, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this term, the mass resignation, but there's another thing going on where we're seeing, and this has been very clearly documented and it's only going to get worse, where we're seeing this massive exodus of boomer era guys who are basically retiring from their business. And because they never put the systems in place, they never actually made it a business. It was just them. They're essentially going, shit, I don't have anything to retire on. I don't have anything to pass on or sell it. And they're literally just closing the door. Right. So there's this massive shortfall that's happening. Now, this is also an opportunity. This is great. But yes, I think the vast majority think they'll be able to sell it or think they'll be able to work, into their 70s, but they get to a certain point, you start slowing down, right? It's a demanding industry we're in, and there's really nothing there. But I do meet a lot of guys, who I think have the mindset of like, hey, I want to make this sellable. But I don't think really most people understand that in order to do that, you have to make it so that it can run without you.
Exactly. And it needs to be profitable. And I think that's another thing. All of that cash value that you've taken, because there is no paper trail, that's not going to form part of your valuation. So that's another reason why you shouldn't do it. So here's my philosophy on this, Liam, and I'd love to get your 2 cents on it. I'm a big believer that as business owners, we should be treating our business as if it has no value, and we should be taking the profits out and building wealth personally and aiming to create financial freedom aside from our business. And then we should be positioning our business for sale and working towards that point. And then the aim is that if we do sell our business successfully, it's then just cream on top.
Okay. I mean,
what's your philosophy?
So I have actually a similar philosophy, but slightly different. But what you presented that actually, I kind of agree with that, because the reality is very few contracting businesses, statistically speaking, do get sold. Yeah. Because it's very hard to sell them because there's so many moving parts. And most of the time, you're not going to get a good multiplier.
No.
Right? Because the problem with contracting is that there's so many variables, and most people who buy businesses like to buy things with consistent recurring revenue, with consistent profits. And the problem is contracting, you can have a great year. You can have like Coronas come, you have all these external factors, interest rates going up, all these things that can completely cycle the business up and down. And even just like the cost of materials, like we're seeing right now, for a lot of people, it's just too risky because there's too many variable costs versus a very simple, boring business, right? It doesn't have a lot of moving parts. It's a much more attractive. So I think that even if you can sell it, you're never going to get, like you said, you're never going to get what the return you deserve, right? You're not going to get, 5, 6, 7 times EBITDA. You're not, man. Like you're going to be lucky to get like 2 or 3. Yeah. So I think if you, like you said, take control of developing your own wealth personally through the business, one, it's going to be more fun, I think, which is cool because you're doing it on the journey versus like, imagine you're working 30 years to do this thing in 30 years and you get there. Maybe you can't do it. Maybe you don't want to do it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Maybe you get there and you're like, actually, I don't want to sell this thing because it's a wicked cash flow machine. Right. Exactly. And I like this. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's funny. The way you described it is just another version of how I would describe it. But yeah, I think you have to get the business to pay for your freedom while you're in it. Yeah. And then if it gets to the point where it is sellable, well, then at that point, it should be able to run without you. So you should be able to have someone just manage it and collect a nice, steady cash flow return and not have to spend a ton of time in it. And that's the best business of all.
100%. Right? Yeah. It's just, I was speaking to a fella and he said, it's a business that shits money.
Yeah. And I've seen a few of them where I'm like, whoa, like, damn, like it's like a money laundering operation. It's like, this is just like literally a money printing machine that really doesn't require like too much of the owner's time. And there's really not a lot of businesses you can get like that.
No.
You know?
And that's the ultimate position because it gives you the freedom of choice. So
Yeah.
let's assume that we've got a contractor business that they understand their numbers. They've dialed in their pricing. They know that the cash flows of their business. And they want to be able to get freedom. And freedom comes from two ways. It's about having an excess of surplus or profits and also an excess of time. So what's the process of going from, say, being on the tools and being the primary income earner, rainmaker for the business to getting to having that freedom in a business that produces that cash? What are the kind of key milestones in your opinion, Liam?
So it's going to sound cheesy because I hate saying this kind of stuff, but it's true. The first thing is you have to have like a mental mindset shift, right? Like it is the number one thing. So I think for a lot of guys, it's a mix of ego, pride, but also fear and uncertainty and micromanagement kind of stuff of going like, no one else can do this as well as me. I'm the best at this, or someone's going to mess it up. And if I stop doing it, my customers won't like it. So I have to always be there. So I think ultimately the first hurdle is just having the mental shift of going, you know what, I need to get out of this because I can't grow beyond myself and I need a team. And two, like, even if someone can't do it as good as me, I can train them to be 80% as good as me. And they can do, I can have 5 of those people. Right. Exactly. So I think that's first. And if you do have your numbers dialed in, I think honestly, like the first big thing is getting your operations together. So getting like a decent bookkeeper, admin, project manager, just like you have to get your operations tight, right? Before you go and scale and hire all those people. And I think if you focus on that first, so let's say like getting the systems to run your jobs, getting the bookkeeping, getting the systems to track your profits, getting the systems to deal with all your leads coming in marketing, basically anything operational, in my opinion, that comes first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Once you've made the mindset shift. Yeah.
Yeah, look, because we see it all the time when we work with trade businesses. The biggest issue, the biggest cash-eating monster in their business is a creeping cost of sales because they've hired all of these guys and then they've got no transparency on what they've quoted to what's being how that job's being project managed. There's no accountability for their frontline forces to use the materials that they already have in the truck before they go and hit up the supplier for more stuff. Yeah. And then the business ends up bleeding money. And they're like, oh shit, it just reinforces their belief. They're like, oh, if I want to do it done properly, I need to do it myself.
Yeah.
And it just perpetuates, right?
Yeah, it's a vicious circle. And then I think also a lot of guys go, oh, I'm not making money. I need to go do more work. I need to sell more and hire more guys. That's going to solve all my problems. And it's like, no, man, your bucket's leaky.
Makes it worse.
Pouring water in your leaky bucket. And I see it all the time. I'm sure you do, where we help guys who come in and they're doing like 3 or 4 million in revenue. And we actually look at their numbers and we're like, dude, you were more profitable at 1 million.
Exactly.
Right. And they're like, and I was less stressed. And I was, maybe this is you listening, like working less hours and I was less stressed and I had less employees. It's like, yeah, everything gets, you're like, as you scale, right? Like everything gets more complex and generally more expensive. And sales is generally not the answer. It's usually the problem.
Sure.
Right.
And look, this is the thing. Like in a best case scenario, we implement these things as we go and we don't learn the hard way. But I'm sure there's so many people that are listening or watching who have a multi-6-figure or 7-figure or multi-7-figure trade business. And they're like, fuck, like my business has just got so much wrong with it. So when you work with somebody who say he's got a $3 or $4 million business and you identify that they're more profitable at 1 million, what do you do to start changing that and kind of getting this big beast back on track?
So I think we do with a lot of people, I'm not sure if you guys do this, is we look at like, what are the actual types of income that they, or like revenue that they bring into the business. So what we'll find with a lot of, and it applies at all scale, but especially the bigger guys, is usually there's a mix of services or a mix of type of work. And usually only 1 or 2 of them is actually profitable and is actually the one, right? And they just ended up doing this because they're like, oh, I can start this division, or, I can start doing this kind of thing because someone asked me to do it. So actually figuring out what makes you money, right? Like what, and again, generally we find if you can niche, it's generally better. There are some risks obviously with niching, but generally tends to be the best route. So figuring that out, I think at first, right? Again, just like if you're running a restaurant, certain things on the menu aren't profitable. People aren't ordering them, right? Or the people who order them always complain. So it's like, I think if you figure that first,
get rid of it.
Man. And the earlier you figure it out in your journey, the better. Because if you realize like, hey, I'm actually only really good at these 2 things, and this makes me money, sick, just scale that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. I think this is the biggest fear as an entrepreneur, particularly when you're an expert and you could do a lot of things and you can help a lot of people. You want to help all of them. You shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
You can't.
It's counterproductive and it's costing you tremendous amounts of money. And it's no exception for trades. So when you tell a tradesperson to niche, to focus on a specific segment of the market or a particular type of project or job, what's their typical response to that, mate?
they're like, I can't. Like, I'm going to lose all this money, or I'm let people down. I can't say no to these people. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't say no? Of course you can say no. I think a lot of guys don't know they can just say no.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, just a weird learned behavior. So yeah, usually it's met with suspicion, apprehension, fear. But then again, once you look at the data, it's usually pretty hard often to make these kind of decisions when the data just stares right at you and goes,
Exactly.
no, like this is not making sense financially. Right.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's turning on those lights financially, and they just go, wow, okay, I didn't realize all of this work that I was actually losing money on. What's the point? What's the point of doing stuff that's going to either break even or lose money?
It's insane. And I think a lot of the guys too, they don't really talk to their team. And we find we do a couple of exercises, we get them actually sit down with their team and kind of go like, hey, what's going on in the business day to day? Because here's the thing, guys, if you have a team, they spend way more time with your clients out in the field doing this stuff than you do, right? Like they're really your eyes and ears. We kind of have a joke at PFC that your clients work for your customers, you work for your teams. And it's true, because your guys are out there. They're the ones doing it. They're the ones out there all day, right? You have 10 guys. You can't be at every job site. It's impossible. And you shouldn't be, first off. If you're trying to, that's a problem. So you need to kind of actually sit down with your team and go like, hey guys, what's going well, right? Like what's going poorly? What type of work or customer or whatever, right? Are you having trouble with? Is that like a repeat issue, right? Or, oh man, this type of work, we're always getting delayed on it because we can't get the permits or because materials are never in stock. Like you have to actually sit down with your guys and girls and go like, hey guys, like, what can we do to make this business obviously better and more efficient? But what do you actually like to do? Because maybe you have guys who love doing the type of work that's profitable, but you put them on these jobs that suck, that they hate, that's not making any money. So they're double miserable, right? And I think that's the other thing is we think our guys will just do whatever, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Look, and I think that's so important. At the end of the day, there's two types of capital. There's money capital and there's human capital. And it's like, you wouldn't do anything to jeopardize a house that you own, an investment property. Why don't you treat your team the exact same way with the same values, like that they're an investment? How do you maximize your return on investment? Well, you got to keep them happy doing the stuff that they're meant to do. So that makes a lot of sense, mate. Love that. Cool. So most people get into business because they want to create freedom and flexibility. But I think for trades businesses, there's this big disparity of wealth.
Yeah.
There are some tradies who get it. Maybe they get lucky. Maybe they're just really, really good at what they do, and they have this knack for building wealth, particularly through property.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of tradies who are just living hand to mouth, like my parents did for many years, and just never managed to escape that grind. What do you think's the difference between those two types of trades business owners, mate?
Oh man, that's a big question. I think again, it's the guys who figure it out per se. Again, they learn that it's a game of business, right? And they learn that this is not about what I do, or what trade I'm in, or what service I offer. Really, at the end of the day, while that's important, it's really they learn that this is a game of numbers. This is a game of business. This is a game of me being the CEO. So I think they do that pretty quickly. And I think the second thing that I've noticed personally, especially when I see it with our members, is the guys who really figure it out quick. They're constantly committed to learning, constantly like reinvesting in themselves, taking courses, training, going to like, if they get into real estate, they're going to real estate seminars, they're going to getting real estate coaching. They're, constantly going and learning about the newest materials. Like those guys, they never stop that hunger. And that's funnily enough, when you get into the trades, right? Like that's the thing, you're learning all the time. You're developing your skill, you're upskilling constantly. And then a lot of guys get a business and they just stop learning.
Exactly.
And they never really get anywhere. And I think it's those guys who get it and they click, they have that. They kind of just always think, like, hey, Mick, I'm shit. I need to learn more, right? Like, I think that's it. Could be wrong, but that's what I see.
100%. Right. I think you nailed it. And what's interesting, we've had the pleasure of working with a couple of guys from your group, and they're on all of our calls. They turn up to everything. They're just like sponges. And then I think this is the credit to the community that you've created, because it's those types of people who are always going to be successful. They understand that there's a gap. They know they're not the smartest person in the room, and they have that thirst for knowledge and that thirst for knowing, not just abdicating responsibility or burying their head in the sand, expecting the world to change around them, because it never does. Unless you take control and you put yourself in the driver's seat financially, the reality of the situation is never going to change.
Yeah. I mean, no, like, listen, there are guys who like, there is a small middle minority where they can get a good, like you said, they can get a good high 6-figure, low 7-figure, almost kind of like cottage industry business. Right. But I'll see those, but then again, like you're only ever one step away from disaster at that business, 100%. Right? Like, right. Massive downturn in the economy. It's like, all of a sudden, oh shit, like no one's doing this niche service that I provide that I never right? Figured out a plan for. It's like, again, it can work. The guys in that who bug me the most, and I'm sure you hear this as well, guys like, oh, I don't advertise. I only work by referral.
Yeah. And just, your whole business is outside of your control. When those people stop referring, you don't have a business.
Or again, like, what's the first thing to stop in like a downturn in the economy? Repeat referral business.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when people are uncertain, they're not referring.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they say it with a smug arrogance. Like, we don't do advertising. It's beneath them. Like, we don't market. It's like, I only do by invite only. It's like realtors, right? I only work by referral. It's like, oh, okay. How's that going for you?
Yeah. Wait for the next recession and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on it. Yeah.
Super valuable. So mate, let's summarize the top 3 things that a trade or contract business can do to really take control of their profitability and their growth trajectory. What would be your top 3 tips?
Get your books, learn your numbers in order. So again, if you don't have a bookkeeper, you don't have anybody, and I'm not talking about accountants, because again, we're not going to get into accountants, but like just having a good basic admin bookkeeper, someone who can like organize receipts, right? Just send invoices, like get your basic shit together. Someone knows how to use QuickBooks. They know how to track like a P&L. They know how to reconcile, set up your bank accounts. Like that's number one. Get your financial building blocks in order, right? Because you don't have that, like there's the old expression, you make what you measure, right? So if you're not measuring anything, you're going to make shit because you don't know. So I think that's number one. Number 2 is you have to make the mental decision, or you have to make the almost promise to yourself that you need to grow out of being the guy, like in the business, in terms of being the all-star, right? You have to get in the mindset now that eventually this business is not going to run with you there, that you can't be ever at once, you can't do everything, you can't please everybody, and that you have to slowly start again through training, through getting mentorship, doing the stuff, moving up, right, within your business, and growing as a human as well. And then I would say the third thing is, coupled with that is, like you said, you need to have a really good team, and you need to have a plan with how you're going to reinvest your profits, whether you're, again, doing profit sharing with your team or like the stuff that you help with, obviously, on your personal journey, because it's very easy for 3, 4, 5, 6 years to go by and to just accumulate. I see it all the time. Guys accumulate a crap load of cash. They're like, oh, I have $600,000 in my bank account. I'm like, that's like, you're literally losing money to inflation. Exactly. You're paying ignorance tax, right? Like you're losing 7% a year essentially to that money that's sitting there, right? So if you don't have a financial plan, just like you don't have a business plan, just like you don't have a marketing, any plan per se, right? You're screwed. And again, anybody who's listening, maybe you're about to go out on your own, you're just starting a business, or you've only been in business a few years. Guys, the sooner you get this shit together, it's exponential on your profits.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. I mean, you know about exponential growth, dude. It's like the sooner you get this shit together, man, like it's millions of dollars you're going to make.
Exactly.
Right?
And everyone always says, oh, I still wish I did this sooner. It's just, you got to bite the bullet. You got to prioritize it. It's so important.
Yeah. We had a guy join the program the other day and he's like, man, I wish I did this shit 7 years ago. He's like, if only I had learned this 7 years ago. He's like, I didn't even want to think about how much money I would have, but it's also on that note, I think you agree, Jackson, it's never too late, man.
No, it's not.
No. It's not. You can be 50, but you can still get this shit together.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Well, we've got some clients who are in their 60s and they're still going at it and ramping things up now. So it's never too late as long as you've got the will to persevere. And I think that's the most important thing. It takes work, and there's not going to be any one single decision that gets you to being financially free in your trade business. However, we can make it work a whole lot harder for you and reward you more handsomely for all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you're pouring in.
Yeah. And just don't do it alone.
No.
Right? It's hard enough to do it. Like, just even if things are all going well, it's difficult, right? To try and figure out. And again, like, I don't know how to manage my money personally. People who help me with it. That's what you do for a living, dude. It's like, I'm not so smart to think that I have all the answers, right? Like, it's impossible,
sure.
And hey, quick question to all the trades guys out there. Do people hire you because you're really good at something that they're not?
Exactly.
Yeah, they do, right? They might be able to do it themselves, but it's going to be so painful and so expensive and so time consuming and so frustrating that the idea of doing it themselves is fucking terrible,
100%.
Right? So why are you taking that mindset approach to your own business?
Exactly. Yeah. Don't be the plumber with the leaky taps, right?
Yeah. Leaky bank account, right? So yeah.
Leaky bank. Yeah. That's what it's all about. So Liam, if anybody's listening to this and they want to get in touch with you to have a conversation around how you might be able to help them grow and scale their contract or trade business, how would they go about that?
Just go to, probably the easiest thing is go to our Instagram at Profit for Contractors, or the website profitforcontractors.com. Or just go check out our YouTube page. We got tons of free content up there, guys, like how to price, how to manage your cash flow, how to hire, we got endless resources there. Just go to YouTube, type Profit for Contractors. And yeah, that's probably the easiest, simplest way. And maybe you don't need help, but maybe you just want to know what other guys are talking about, right?
Awesome. We'll include all the links in the show notes. Liam, I appreciate you making the time, mate. It's been great to chat with you. And guys, remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure that you implement whatever you learned from the show, and look forward to catching you next time.
Thanks, man. Super fun.
See you later.